The biggest challenges, honestly, was number one, we had two smaller companies that merged together to become Edges. We had two completely separate C-suites and a lot of duplicate jobs and positions, but we managed to go through the whole merger without laying anybody off. The other biggest challenge, honestly, has been resistance to change. We've watched our company and our industry grow as far as technology has improved so much in the last 10 or 15 years. I run the credit department of new customers' credit applications. Back in the day, this was a manual process. We actually had a PDF paper application several years ago. We realized our backlog on credit applications, processing them was getting way too big. It was taking much too long to open new accounts. And so we knew we had to start automating this process in some way. Now that we're doing it all online and it's completely digital, the majority of that is automated for us.
We actually believe that connecting the CRM with the ERP, with the internal credit application system, makes a lot of sense because you have a single source of truth across the customer's credit risk, across customer contacts, and multiple other things.
I can envision perhaps AI agents being able to do minimal evaluations of these credit applications. So, for example, if we have a COD customer, we're programming the AI agent to just automatically approve those COD
Right.
applications. It would be nice if
Right.
AI was able to at least flag those for me. Here's your top 5 applications today that we recommend approving right away.
From a sales aspect of things, every client is important, but prioritization is really important because then you know which account to focus on and prioritize that specific account. You're able to predict this customer I'm onboarding, this is a priority P0 because it's going to pay me good money, it has a low risk attached to it, and I should have an account manager who can make the most out of the business.
To me, that's really important is to never stop learning. We talk about being open to change, but part of that is keeping your mind open to learning new things as well. So you have to be willing and open to embrace new technologies, embrace new ideas, and learn how they can really work for you. And then the last thing, it's not really technology related, but is developing a really good relationship with your sales team.
Having the right level of revenue growth with cost control and with the proper level of risk control measures can be a deadly combination for firms to grow. Hello everyone, I'm your host Amartya Singh, the co-founder and CEO of Inflow, an AI product built by and for modern finance teams. Welcome to the 20th episode of Inside the CFO Office podcast, where we explore the journeys of finance leaders, discuss their challenges that they have overcome, and gain insights into the future of finance. We have with us Deana, who is the Director of Credit at Edges Electrical Group. Edges Electrical Group is one of Northern California's largest independent electrical distributors with 12 locations. Deana comes with close to 2 decades of experience in credit across multiple firms, with a recent stint being at Edges Electrical Group. One of the most interesting aspects of her work career was her time as a pilot in the US Air Force. So today we'll be speaking on the topic of automation of credit decisions.
Thank you
Welcome,
so
Diana.
much for
Good to have you
inviting
with
me.
us.
I'm really glad to be here.
Thanks, Diana. So let's dig into the podcast and let's start with the first question. Your journey has been really interesting from the US Air Force and across different industries, all stints in credit side and ultimately Edges Electrical Group. How has been your journey towards becoming a
My
finance leader?
journey to my current position has been very unusual compared to a lot of others that are in my career field. And I started out when I was young. I was in the Air Force, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to be a pilot in the United States Air Force. And I got to fly upside down and break the sound barrier and do all of that fun stuff. And just about that time, I got married and was ready to start a family. This was in the 80s, and Operation Desert Storm began. And I really made a life decision that I wanted to be able to stay home and be a mother. And so I made the decision to go ahead and leave the Air Force. I traveled quite a bit for my husband's career throughout the United States, taking on a lot of different jobs because I was concentrating on raising children and he had the more stable income. So I had a lot of different jobs. And then some years later, unfortunately, I did get a divorce. And after being a stay at home parent for several years, I just took on temporary jobs. I applied with every agency. I did a lot of different jobs. And then a friend of a friend said that this company, who is an electrical distributor, is hiring for the credit department. And I had no idea what a credit department did. I said, let's try it. And I applied. I got the job. And I've been here for over 18 years now.
Got it. No, great. I think a very interesting journey. And have you mostly lived in the West Coast or it's been East Coast as well and all
So
over?
my career has been here in California. When I was in the military, I spent a little time in a few other states. I was in Oklahoma, Ohio, Kansas, but I was born and raised in California and ended up back in California. And that's where I've been ever since.
I think one of the most interesting aspect has been the way you have candidly put across your life journey has been really interesting. And I'm sure it must not have been easy to have that kind of uncertainties, but kudos to you to make it till here and being the director of credit at Edges. And we spoke about the experience of credit piece, and of course we'll be talking about the automation of credit decisions when we come to that. But how has been your journey at Edges, and what have been the top two challenges that
So
you have faced
throughout
at
my
Edges?
time at Edges, the biggest challenges, honestly, was number one was about 10 years ago, and we had a merger. And so we had two smaller companies that merged together to become Edges. And that was very challenging because we had two completely separate C suites and a lot of duplicate jobs and positions. But we managed to go through the whole merger without laying anybody off. We found a spot for every single person in both companies. And we've since doubled in size even since then. So it was very challenging those first couple of years, but we came out the other side better for it. My other biggest challenge, honestly, has been resistance to change. And I think that's very common throughout a lot of industries, but especially finance. I find that people who are drawn to finance as a career love numbers. They like having the answer come out the same every single time. And then when you throw in something that's going to make that a huge change, a lot of people get very nervous. And we've watched our company and our industry grow as far as technology has improved so much in the last 10 or 15 years. It's night and day difference from when we started. And every time we add a new component, people get nervous. I personally, I love it. I love the change. I love learning new things and seeing how we can make things better. But trying to get buy-in from all the parties involved is definitely challenging.
Got it. I think two things that you covered. One was the challenge, of course, when the M&As were happening and when the entities were merging. And I think one challenge you mentioned was that you managed to ensure that there were no attrition, there were no job losses from the M&A. And would love to know how did you manage that? Of course, I mean there are multiple things aspect of it because when you are merging the functions of two companies, processes are different, technologies are different, and there is always a question whether we need that kind of headcount. It's difficult to justify that you have 10 folks managing, let's say, $1 billion and 24 revenue company. And when you're merging it, obviously there are questions on whether these many people are justified. Number one. Number two, technology, as you mentioned, technology has also undergone a change. How do you manage to make that balance and justify the management team that, hey, we should have this many people and that's how
Well,
it should work? How
I
did you do
was
that?
not in a leadership position at the time that happened, but my boss was actually one of our partners. And what was shared with me is that it was very important to our leadership team that we maintain all of the current employees and not have any layoffs in response to this merger. So some people had to move to different departments. We made some definite changes. For example, when We were two different companies. We were both small family owned businesses and did not have an HR team. So when we merged, a lot of the people who were in redundant positions actually got moved and learned the HR function and became part of human resources. So we created a whole new department
Right.
to move some people into. So it was
Got
really important. It's one of the reasons that I'm loyal to this company is I really feel like they're looking out for their employees 100%.
I think that's incredible considering the times that we are living in. The empathy with all the folks in the company goes a lot way in building the trust. It also increases the productivity amongst people, so people don't have to worry about what is going to happen with my job, and they can actually do their best on focusing on their work, and that's how the work productivity also becomes better. So incredible. I think that's very important. And I think one thing also you covered is the aspect of technology, right? And I would love to know how have you seen technology influencing the entire automation of credit decisions, credit scoring, and the entire functions and the aspects of credit role. How do you see technology
Oh,
has
it's
influenced the
been
automation part of it?
a huge uh, bonus for us to incorporate technology. I can tell you in my department, I run the credit department, and one of our functions is new customers' credit applications and setting them up in our system. And back in the day, this was a manual process. We actually had a PDF paper application. Sometimes people would print it and fill it out by hand, and then sometimes they would actually type it on their screen and then just email it or send it to us on a fax machine, and then sometimes drop it off in person. And it was a completely manual process. And then several years ago, we realized that we were just getting too big. Our backlog on credit applications, processing them was getting way too big. It was taking much too long to open new accounts. And so we knew we had to start automating this process in some way. And so we started investigating and getting
Right.
demos from some companies that did online credit applications. And we're actually on our third company right now, but we're pretty happy. But that's made a very large difference. In the manual application, we would have to send out emails requesting information for trade references, emails to the banks, and it was just a lot of phone calls and emails to evaluate all this. In addition to running a credit report on a service like Experian. Now that we're doing it all online and it's completely digital, the majority of that is automated for us. The customers just log on and they do it. The credit trade references are sent out automatically. The reporting is integrated into the platform, so they don't have to go off to the side and go run another credit report. Um, we still do a manual approval. And the reason we do that is because our specific industry is construction. And so it's a little different than a lot of industries in that someone who doesn't have very good credit, we may still extend credit to them because we have mechanics lien rights on construction projects. So we have that kind of security, which is why we have not yet found a solution that can automate the decision making, but it can automate so much of the work that goes into it that we're able to keep up.
Got it. I think one thing you summarized it really well was the movement from entire paper-based credit assessment to automated credit assessment. And I think having that entire online portal where customers can upload their documents or provide basic details based on which one is an Experian credit check. There are other aspects like DNB and financial statement check, and you can do multiple of NSCM, for example. And there are multiple other ways, I think, linking it with the portal and doing a credit assessment. And I also agree with you that there is need of a personal touch or a human touch to take the decision, because data gives you certain numbers, but as credit controllers or credit folks, you also understand certain aspects of the business which a data source or technology might not cover. And that's also important that throughout the life cycle of a customer, and you, let's say you get a alarm or you get a red flag on a customer, but you know that this customer has not been defaulting on any payments since last 12 months, you will take those decisions much differently if you already have a perspective. So I completely agree that a human element actually helps in terms of taking better decisions. One question here in terms of the onboarding, and I think many companies an entire onboarding process in a CRM or a homegrown system in which they handle their opportunities and their accounts, the entire onboarding process flow. That's when the credit
Yeah.
team typically really comes in. So, are your credit decisions also automated and linked with your internal CRM or a Salesforce kind of a CRM, or are they like an independent application outside
Um,
the CRM?
So, a quick overview on how the process works for us is our customer applies online. I am the one who actually evaluates and gives the approval. And then someone on my team logs to the platform to get all of the information and then uses that to set the customer up in our ERP. We do not yet have
Okay,
the technology to do that part automatically. I can see that
got it.
coming down the road because technology is just exponentially improving, right? So I very much see that as
Right.
something that may happen when maybe even in the next 5 years or less. But right now, it's still requiring a person to manually put it into the ERP.
Got it. I think that's incredible. We actually believe that connecting the CRM with the ERP, with the internal credit application system makes a lot of sense because you have a single source of truth across the customer's credit risk, across customer contacts, and multiple other things. So I completely agree with you, and that's where technology is going to get really powerful with AI agents connecting different dots. And that brings us to the next question. Would love to know your take on the AI aspect and technology aspect terms of handling doing better credit scoring, having better credit decision, better credit controllership. How do you see AI influencing this entire
How I'm
process?
seeing this, I'm envisioning how we're moving forward with the improvements that are happening with AI every day. I can envision perhaps AI agents being able to do minimal evaluations of these credit applications. So, for example, if we have a COD customer, we don't really need to evaluate their credit worthiness because they're paying on the spot. So, I
Right.
could see
Mm.
programming the AI agent to just automatically approve those COD
Right.
applications. I don't actually have to look at those. So I'm
Right.
hoping that is an improvement
Right.
that we'll be seeing come down the road. And by the same token, occasionally you get customers who just have amazing credit, great trade references, a long history, and what we call a no brainer. Like, of course, we're going to open that account. It would be nice as long as all of the checks are done to ensure it's not a fraudulent application. It would be nice if
Right.
AI was able to at least flag those for me. Here's your top 5 applications today that
Right.
we recommend approving right away. Then I might prioritize those and get those moving more quickly.
Right.
So that's what I'm envisioning um, coming down the road for us. And I really want to take advantage of that.
One very interesting aspect you mentioned is the
Mhm.
prioritization of accounts. If you see from a sales aspect of things, every client is important, but prioritization is really important because then you know which account to focus on and prioritize that specific account. And you know that, hey, I am going to give this kind of terms to this particular customer. I am going to dedicate my best account
Mhm.
manager for this particular customer, and I will be ready to negotiate a specific pricing, and it automatically impacts the cash flows, right? Because when you know that it's a prioritized customer, you have much better grip on your cash flows because you can predict what money that this particular customer is going to pay you, right? So I think prioritization of accounts and opportunities is, and you nailed it, it's a very important aspect of it. And if an AI agent can do it by linking market intelligence, linking historical data, taking the context of you as a client, as HS Electrical Group, you have a certain level of clients. You have 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 clients. So all those clients, how do they behave? How are they making the payment? Their credit score is this. They have these kind of attributes towards themselves, and this is how they're actually making a payment, or this is how they're actually behaving. And that's how you do surrogate analysis, and you're able to predict this customer I'm onboarding, this is a priority P0 because it's going to pay me good money. It has a low risk attached to it, and I should have an account manager who can make the most out of the business. So I completely agree. I think opportunity, the prioritization of that account makes a lot of sense. So thanks for clarifying on the applications of AI, and I'm sure that you must be seeing a lot of discussions internally within the teams as well on application of AI. Great. I think let's go to the final question of the podcast, and would love to know your advice for finance professionals. And I know that you have had a lot of challenges in your career and on personal life, professional life, and you made it through this. And kudos to you for making it this far. And would love to know what would be your advice for finance leaders to become
I would
somebody like you.
say a couple of things. The first thing to me that's really important is to never stop learning. We talk about being open to change, but part of that is keeping your mind open to learning new things as well. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades. I still go to trade conferences and take online learning classes, and I never want to stop learning because the more I learn, especially about the technology that is coming down the road for us, the more excited I am on how much more efficient my projects can be and my team. So never stop
Right.
learning. Always keep looking for those options. Always be open to change because if you get stagnant, then you're not going to improve. So you have to be willing and open to embrace new technologies, embrace new ideas, and learn how they can really work for you. And then the last thing, it's not really technology like related, but is developing a really good relationship with your sales team. So we talked about prioritizing those credit applications to get those really good customers onboarded as soon as possible and get them assigned to an outside salesperson who can really work with them because that's going to grow revenue for your company. Your salesperson is going to make really good commissions and they're going to really want to work with you because typically credit and sales have all of an antagonistic relationship because sales often views us as the
Yeah.
order killer or the say no department. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do since I became the director is to change that perception. And it really starts with those credit applications and getting those customers approved and set up in our ERP so our sales team can start making those sales to them.
Got it. I think three aspects mentioned in your answer or in a response. First thing was the need to learn, keep learning. That's really important because it's been really interesting the last decade, especially post COVID 2020. Times have really been interesting because till a certain point of time, we had the accountants doing something, the same
Mm-hmm.
thing day in, day out, right? But times have changed. Technology has really made a lot of changes. You look at ERPs, for example, you have SAP's, Microsoft, Oracle's, JD Edwards of the world, and there is a certain way that accounting bookkeeping works, right? But so many aspects of finance have changed, right? You have credit, you have AR, you have AP, you have entire aspect of FP&A really coming up in a very big way. You have treasury becoming really important for companies. You have forecasting aspect of it. You have spend
Mm-hmm.
management, expense management, AI completely changing around things. I think there's such a lot of changes, and I loved it that finance leaders are actually ready to change with times, ready to look to embrace new technologies, as you mentioned, and that's really very important for accepting technology. I think that's very important for companies to embrace technology, accept that things are changing, and being
I
on the
totally
forefront of
agree.
it. I think also great times ahead, and with AI coming into the picture, I think things will change with regards to how
I
firms are
do
really shaping
too.
up.
One of the platforms that we use, like a chat AI agent, and it helps me do things like I can just say, show me my top 10 customers and their payment history for the last 90 days. And then it
Right,
just thinks about it and then it brings it to me. And I don't have to try to figure out how to run a report out of the ERP. And so
right,
it's a huge time saver. And even just something as basic as pulling data out for some analytics, it is something that every time we would close the end of the month and we'd have to generate all these reports and it would take time to do that. And now I can just ask and then it's given to me. So
yeah,
as long as
right, right.
we test and make sure that the data that we're getting is trustworthy, once we confirm that, I love it.
I agree. AI is having those data points and Giving the answers in the right way to the questions that you are asked with in a trustworthy way makes a lot of difference. I think the other aspect that you covered was the entire aspect of trust between, or trust or the bonhomie between credit and the sales team. I completely agree, and we at Finfo have completely agreed on this. We see that there are a lot of challenges in the entire thing, and as you mentioned, sales are running behind numbers, and finance teams or credit teams bring that control or the restraint in what we are doing. So it creates that very powerful mixture of going aggressive and bringing that restraint into what you're doing. I think the entire, and as again the last 5 years, I think this has changed as you mentioned, and I'm really happy to see you talk about that and really believe in the finance teams enabling sales team to get better numbers, better commissions, because cost control is one aspect of growing, but revenue growth is one very big aspect of growth. So both have to work hand in hand, and having the right level of revenue growth with cost control and with the proper level of risk control measures can be a deadly combination for firms to grow. Loved your answer actually between how sales and finance teams, sales and credit teams can work together in terms of ensuring success at the right amount of risk control. So loved your answer, Deana, and I think we draw to the end of the podcast. Thanks everybody for joining into the 20th episode. I hope you had great fun listening to Deanna's journey, her challenges, and her take on the future of finance. Please reach out to her for anything, for any guidance, anything that you want to check with her. And she's very helpful. She'll help you in the best possible way. So thanks, Deanna, for
Thank
being
you
a
so
part
much
of
for
it. Love
inviting me. I
speaking with
enjoyed
you.